In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to install the Hortonworks Sandbox that lets you run a real Hadoop installation on your desktop or laptop system. This application is a free download from Hortonworks, and it does require you to register, but there's no obligation of any sort. It's a freely available package after that point. So to get the software, you can navigate over to hortonworks.com. And I have the page up here. There's two things you need to do. One is get yourself a copy of Oracle VirtualBox. And if we click on the link on the page, you'll see it'll bring you to the VirtualBox page for Oracle. And then if you go over to downloads, on the left side, you'll see there's a download for OS X. And you can click on that to download. Going back to the Horton page, you'll see over here there's a down here number 2. Where I just clicked over here. There's the VirtualBox version. That also, you need to download that. So once you download those two, you're ready to do the install. So we've already downloaded them. I'm going to minimize the window. And on my desktop here, in the upper right-hand corner, I've got the VirtualBox and the Hortonworks software. So the first thing I'm going to do is install the VirtualBox. And by double-clicking on that, I get this window, and to install, I just double-click on this box here. And we get the installation screen, and I'll just go through this quickly. And we'll use all the default installations. Needs a password. And it continues on. It takes a minute or two to get things loaded up here. So after it has installed, the installation was successful. And we click close. Now we're going to launch VirtualBox from our applications window. So we'll double click on VirtualBox and it'll bring up the VirtualBox interface. And again, VirtualBox is going to run a virtual machine on our system, and that's what this is going to manage for us. So the first thing we need to do is go up to VirtualBox menu on the bar and click Preferences and go over to Network and click over here where it says Host Only Networks. There's a plus icon on the side. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to bring up VBox Net 0, which is what we want. And we want to make sure down here it says Adapter Manually Configured DHCP Server Disabled. So when we have that, we click OK. Okay, now that we've got that interface set, we're going to import our machine. So we're going to need to go to File, Import Appliance, and we click on Open Appliance, and we go to Desktop, and there's our Hortonworks appliance. We're going to open it by clicking on it, click Continue, and it's going to import the system into the VirtualBox. So this is going to take a minute or so as it moves the disk image into the virtual machine. Okay, now that our machine's been imported, you'll notice on the interface here there's the Hortonworks ... which is the Hortonworks Sandbox, which is now a virtual machine that VirtualBox can manage. Before we can start the machine, however, we need to go to Settings and to Network. And Network Adapter 1, we need to set to Host Only Adapter. And it should come up with the name we entered before, VBox Net 0. And we can click OK. Well, actually, before we click OK, let's go over to Adapter 2 and set that as NAT and click OK. So we should be good now to start our virtual machine on the desktop here. So in order to start it, we can click here. There's a little power off button. So let's double click on the machine here. And what it does is brings up another window, which is actually a window into the virtual machine. And we're going to tell it not to keep flashing this message up for us. And when you install, you can read it. So I'll move this over a little bit clear. Now this is a smaller window. I can't make the fonts any bigger, and which isn't that much of an issue. And we have another issue about mouse and so forth. But what we have is in this window, we actually, if you look at it and have ever seen a Linux machine boot, you'll see the actual boot messages coming up on the screen as the machine boots. So this is going to take a few minutes as it loads up the fully running machine, and it'll when it comes back up, we'll be ready to go. Okay, so now our virtual machine has booted in this window up in the screen here, and the message that it tells us is to set our web browser to 192.168.56.101. So we'll do that and see if we can communicate with the virtual machine. We've entered that address into our local web browser on our local machine here, and sure enough, it brings up the Hortonworks Sandbox page. And at the bottom of the page are a couple of options, and including watch videos, which is off the laptop on the Hortonworks site, run tutorial, and use the sandbox. So you can play around with this. You can go look at the tutorials. It will cover some of the things that we have covered in this tutorial. However, it will provide some other things that we were not able to hit upon. And there's many things that we touched on in this tutorial that aren't mentioned in the Hortonworks Sandbox. So it's a good complement either way you look at it. If we look at the Use the Sandbox window, you can see that there's a bunch of icons up here that bring up PIG, HCatalog, a file browser, job browser, etc. All the things we're used to running. But I want to point out that this is a real Hadoop installation. So you can do a lot of the things that we did in the tutorial in terms of software things on your laptop with this interface. Now there's one other thing I wanted to mention, because the web-based tutorial is very nice, but if you want to, you can actually log into your virtual machine and use it from the command line, which is actually handy for doing a lot of the things we do in this tutorial. So let's bring up that terminal. So now we've opened a terminal window on our MacBook here, and what we're going to do is just SSH into that same IP address. And here we have it here, 192.168.56.101. And incidentally, this may come up slightly different on your install. It should be this, but it may not. It will tell you on the window what IP address. We're going to log in, so that means from our laptop, we're logging into this virtual machine, just like it was networked to our laptop. And we're going to log in as root, and the root password is, if you haven't guessed it, is Hadoop. And it's not going to let us do any X forwarding. However, we now are logged into the sandbox, where you can see it's a Linux sandbox running the version of Linux 2.6.32. Java is installed, so you can run the Java examples we do other places in the tutorial. And you also can create login accounts and use the other logins, the HDFS or the MapRed login as well. So you can do pretty much everything we're going to do throughout the tutorial, except when we start talking about using the 4-node cluster, where there's actually 4 physical nodes.